Hello, Slingers. Welcome back to another week of the Wordslinger Podcast. And this week, I got a couple of great guests for you. You're going to enjoy this one. It's sort of a meta episode. It's a podcast about a podcast. So stick around.
It's the Wordslinger Podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented pants optional, Kevin Tomlinson, the Wordslinger.
Wordslinger.
Well, I am Kevin Tomlinson, the Wordslinger. I am grateful for you being here because you could be spending your time in a lot of different places, but you chose here, and so we're gonna hang out. We're gonna enjoy each other's company, and I am glad to have you. Now, I'm a big fan of creators, especially creators who are doing the kind of creating that I'm doing. And, you know, I'm in the author space. I talk a lot about publishing, indie publishing in particular, because that's what I've done for the past decade or so. And but I love talking to authors and creators of all stripes, really. And one of the things that I enjoy is podcasting. If you haven't guessed, I'm kind of prolific as a podcaster. I just heard, so James Patterson is launching what is essentially a podcast on Substack, and he said something about being prolific, and then he says, I hate that word. And I do not. I love that word. I love being considered prolific as both an author and a podcaster. For years, the past, I don't know, I think I started officially podcasting, I'm going to say 2013, because that feels right, but it may have been a little earlier than that, actually. But at some point in the early 2000s, within the second decade of the 2000s, I guess, is that what that is, or the first decade? Anyway, within that time, I started podcasting. I used to work in radio, and so I've been on air. I'm used to addressing an audience. I've done some TV work. I've got that background. But podcasting has been an interesting thing. I'll talk more about this after the interview because I don't want to waste a whole lot of time. But I want to say now, one of the things I enjoy about podcasting is this evolution that's happening with the format. Things like, we talk about this in this episode, we went, all of us sort of adapted what we were comfortable with, what we knew, what we experienced in TV, radio, that sort of thing. When we came online and started producing stuff for like YouTube, we used the formats that we were familiar with. But what I love is how the format has evolved or is evolving. And new ideas are coming around, new ways to do this. This is a new show, not this show. This show's been around for a long while, but the Indie Writers Club is a brand new show from James and Cara, and I'm already a big fan. If you've been listening to podcasts in the indie publishing space for any length of time, you've heard James Blatch, so you're familiar with what he can do and his skill. But it's really great there's fresh new perspectives, and even though a lot of the ground can be the same, there's plenty of room in this space for podcasters of all stripes. So I am thrilled to be able to present these two and their show here on the Wordslinger Podcast. And if you're not already tuning in to the Indie Writers Club, do that now. Actually, do that later after you hear this interview. And without further ado, let's jump right in to this interview with James Blatch and Cara Clare. Well, I am, as always, I'm always excited to have guests, but I'm always particularly excited to have this guest, James Blatch, who you and I have probably talked on various podcasts more than any other two people I can think of over the years.
There's a trend in the UK. Is it called dadcasts?
There's lots of
Dadcasts.
middle-aged men doing podcasts, and they're called dadcasts on politics and all sorts of stuff. But I reckon we could do a dadcast, you and me.
We could probably do that. Yeah. Now we got a whole new excuse. But you've got a podcast you're rolling out already with a special co-host, Cara. Thank you for joining the show.
No, you're welcome. And I think that's the only reason James invited me on the podcast to be his co-host. So it didn't get classified as a dad cast.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I like that there's a term for that now. So
Yeah.
do I count in that? Do I count? And I'm not a dad, so I don't know if I count on the dad
I think it's
side
the
of it.
demographic more than the
Yeah.
actual. You could
Yeah,
identify
also,
as a dad anyway.
James
these
has
days.
enough dad jokes to carry you, even if you're not.
That's what I was going to ask, is if it just comes down to the number of dad jokes, and
Probably,
I
yeah.
qualify. Yeah, I totally
He has
qualify.
those in abundance.
So you guys, now James, you've had, Cara, and I apologize, I don't know your history when it comes to like
That's okay. And
podcasting.
not many people do. I feel completely sort of shocked, really, at the whole thing. Like, I'm co-hosting a podcast with James Blatch. How did that happen?
How did that happen?
It happened over a pint.
Happened because we
Of
got
course,
drunk in a pub.
As all the best things do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was literally that simple. So we're both part of a group of authors in Cambridge, and we meet up every now and again to have a drink and talk about everything indie author related. And James sort of half mentioned that he was thinking of starting a new venture on his own, and I kind of drunkenly said, well, if you want to co-host, like, let me know.
Yeah.
And then a few days later, James texted me and said, I actually think that's quite a good idea. And then I got major imposter syndrome.
Well, you shouldn't do.
Like,
I think you undersell yourself, because in those conversations in the pub, and you and I, Kevin, know, I think, similar amounts about the industry. So we're quite chilling. When it comes to genres, I think that the whole romance thing is just, I'm intrigued by it, but I don't quite get it. And Cara does. Cara will talk intimately about particular tropes and trends coming up and down and who's done what and know all the names and stuff. And that's definitely, it's half of all publishing is romance, isn't it? And that's definitely a missing area for me. So I felt this would be a really good mesh, and it has proved that.
And the show,
I think it's interesting that we're such different genres. That's for people listening. That's kind of, to start with, it doesn't sound like it should fit, like spicy, reverse harem, and military aviation fiction isn't a natural duo. But because we're so different, that's kind of what makes it interesting, because we've both got different perspectives.
Yeah, that's what I think people will want to tune in for, because you get I've done a ton of shows with other thriller writers. I do a show called Writers Inc. podcast, and everyone on the show is either I'm a thriller writer, JD is a thriller and horror writer, the other two are like horror writers. So we're all very similar. So everyone's kind of getting, I mean, we all have different perspectives, but they're all getting sort of the same flavor of advice, I guess.
And the culture,
and
go on.
I've worked in trad publishing, and I've ghost written a couple of different genres, and then became indie, and now I've got some books with Vinci Books, who James works with. So also have kind of different perspectives there as well.
That's
I think the culture is different, isn't it, within the genre? It's not just the genre itself; it's the way they behave and interact in the romance community is different from the way people in the thriller community. And there's a couple of others like that. I think probably Lit RPG seems to have its own language and culture, but the rest of them all kind of similar. But romance, Lit RPG, I think it's quite difficult for outsiders to understand it. I certainly.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's quite a lot of nuance. There's quite a lot of nuances within romance, because there are so many subgenres. And I think romance is one of the things that's biggest on TikTok, which is obviously very current and something that everybody wants to talk about. And it just functions in a slightly different way to the other genres. I think they still respond to the traditional kind of indie methods of marketing a bit more, whereas a lot of the newer niches in romance operate slightly differently.
I've realized that I don't think we ever actually mentioned the name of your show, but it's in Indie Writers Club is the name of the show. And there will be a link in the show notes for people listening and watching. But It's you guys jumped right out of the gate. You wanted to make this thing look as polished and pro as possible. You guys even took like fancy headshots together.
Oh my God, that cheesy photo shoot. You know what? James was so good at it. I was shocked. Like, if I'm honest, the photographer was going, okay, be surprised. And James Blatch just pulled it out of the bag. And I was standing there going, I don't know. What does a surprised face look like?
Well, it did surprise you that I'm shallow and vain and happy to pose in front of a camera. I don't know why.
Now you're saying it like that. No.
Yeah.
James is British Kevin. I mean, he's got camera or microphone shows up and it's all on from that point.
Yeah, I hadn't really realized that. But I think, we wanted to do it properly from the beginning, and we wanted it to be very clear what we were trying to achieve, which was to give people a space like we have when we meet up with authors who, when we have that in-person author group, and it's just invaluable. And we really wanted that kind of vibe to it where people feel like they're part of something and they feel like they're just having a chat with their friends. And quite quickly people started to say that was what they felt, which was really nice.
Yeah. You introduced that concept as when you called it a club, which is that feels like it's going to be like a welcoming, maybe exclusive in some ways, but it's a welcoming community experience, right?
Yeah, there's no initiation ceremony.
No pinning.
But we're working on becoming the most important IWC there is, because it's a reasonably well used set of initials, IWC. The major one is the International Whaling Commission.
Yeah.
But there's also the watch manufacturer, very, very nice Swiss watches.
Yeah, we're aiming for 3 watches this time next year.
Yeah, a couple of watches would do well. But I think in the future, in 5 years' time, when people say IWC on CNN, they'll think, oh, that podcast.
That's what I'm going to, I mean, automatically, I'm already there.
I love that you're manifesting that.
Why are Cara and James in the South Atlantic doing something with whales? That's weird. Maybe it's a different IWC.
Yes. We got really fortunate, or actually, I don't know. Maybe someone did this on purpose, but when they named, I was not part of the naming of the Writers Inc. podcast, but the initials for it are WIP. So every time someone does that,
we have this conversation all the time.
So I use whip. I think I use whip.
Yeah, my pet peeve is when James says whip.
I think it's quite a common expression. And I was trying to say on the podcast we recorded today, I was trying to say to Cara, in my previous life, I had a job in computing. I think it was with a garage group, like, autos, cars. And I'm sure whip was a very commonly used.
Yeah, but that's not what you said. You said, I used to have a job that involved whips.
Yeah, exactly.
And I said, that sounds like something from my line of work.
I was about to say, Gar, you've got this cool shirt on in the photo on the front page of that says slut faming.
Yes, I love that shirt. Like everywhere, whenever I wear that, people go, yes, I love it.
Is the pepper because my mom hates it. Is the pepper because you do spicy romance?
Yeah, the pepper is for the chili peppers. So spicy romance is measured in chili peppers. So if you're 5 chilies of heat, then that's pretty spicy.
Yeah. See, I'm learning stuff already. We need something like that for thrillers. What is it like?
Dagger.
Would it be like a shell, like a round, there
you go. There you go. Or dog in your tags. Place, maybe crashed burning airplanes. Like this is for crashed burning airplanes.
I have quite a lot of airplane parts. People send them to me. I mean, Craig Martell gave me this. This is out of a MiG. It's an oxygen meter.
Oh, what's a MiG?
It's an aircraft with a jet.
If you see one in the sky, it's one of theirs, not one of ours. It's a duck.
So I have something very similar to that you can't see it in the blurry background behind me, but I've got because I used to do, documentary television, and we did a lot of stuff around classic, vintage aircraft and aviation. So I got some crash parts, one of which came from a plane that I actually went down in. So
what? You've been in a plane crash?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We don't have time. We're not going to go into any of that. This is
maybe
show's
Vegas.
Supposed to be about you guys.
Over a beer in Vegas, you can tell me that.
There you go. When James, when you and I do our podcast, the Indie Flyers Club.
Yeah. How cool would that be?
Because nobody's using IFC. That's a joke. It's out there. Go look it up. Everybody just go Google right now.
There was a moment where me and James went, is he serious?
It's not. No, it's not serious. So you guys, now what's the format for the show? What did you guys land on?
So we decided not to do the sort of traditional interviews. I think that I got a bit worn down with the self-publishing show over the years. It was a heavy workload, and recording, did 400 odd interviews.
Yeah.
More than 400 interviews, and you record them, on a Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, sometimes 2 or 3 on a day. And each interview is 45 minutes to an hour. So it took research and holding it together and focusing during that, and then editing that. And that's before you then record the wrap, the sort of top and tail.
Right.
And that wore me down. So so it sounds a bit lazy, but I didn't want that format. I also felt we got quite a lot of feedback from people who said they listened to the beginning and end, but didn't always, or quite a lot of the time, wouldn't listen to the interview unless it particularly piqued their interest. And so it sort of felt like the most important part, or the most laborious part of it was not being valued. So I said to Cara that we will chat like we're in the pub about writing and stuff that's going on in the industry, and we'll do a bit of teaching here and there, because I love a bit of teaching. But if we have guests, it'll be like this, actually, Kevin. It'll be someone just joining us to join the discussion. We're not going to pre-record it, and we do pretty much what you would do. But we haven't had guests yet, but we will at some point. But it'll be someone like you or Sasha, or someone who can sit and chat with us. Not, when did you start writing, and that kind of formal interview.
Yeah, what I'm seeing lately is there's a shift happening. I talk about it a lot. I kind of call it the artisan age a lot. And one of those things, it's happening for the publishing community. There's a merger between the idea of self-publishing and traditional publishing in my mind. But I'm seeing it in all creative fields. Podcasting is the same way. I'm starting to see a shift from the pure formats. Like my show is now, like I do my solo slinger episodes where it's just me talking. People seem to love that, but they like the interviews too. So, I don't want to get rid of them, but I wanted them to be much more casual like this,
It's definitely the way to do it.
Yeah. And I think people there was a couple of times where James would do an episode like on your own, where you were talking about your stuff, or through, your whole journey with your first book was kind of very public. And those were the parts that people were really interested in. And I think what we've said is when we're sitting around with other authors, that's where you tend to learn the most, because we can all go into the Facebook groups and we can all read the books and do the courses. But having those kind of nuanced discussions, that's where you learn like little nuggets of things that you would never have picked up somewhere, because you wouldn't have known to ask the question. So that was kind of what we wanted to give people. And we have the Discord channel tied to that, where we're kind of really trying to encourage people to chat. And we did, neither of us knew how to use it. We were just like, we should have a Discord channel.
And I'm like, I went to a disco when I was a kid. But
I am terrified to do that because I'm worried no one will show up. And then if they do show up, I'm worried that I'll get overwhelmed and won't get any writing done.
So it's 1 or 0 for you. Either no one's going to be there, or too many people.
Or too many people.
Start one and we'll join it, and then it could just be the 3 of us.
Okay,
we're easy to moderate.
Maybe I'll just join yours. I'll just hijack yours, and then
you should definitely come
join ours and hang out in secret and see what you think. But I think for the first few weeks we were quite intensive, having to do quite a lot. But now people are kind of just entertaining themselves. Other people are pitching in, and like conversations and little relationships are starting, which is really nice
that's good
see. But you do have to I have mine muted and just go in there when I specifically have a moment to check it, because otherwise you're just getting inundated with stuff on your phone, which is quite overwhelming.
See, and I think this is that Discord community and the other things that people are doing, it's rooted in something, and I'm starting to kind of get my head around it. But I think what's happening is that people have become weary of purely virtual experiences, and we're looking for points of contact now. Like, we want to know the story behind the podcast, behind we want to know the writer's backstory. We want to communicate with them, have relationships.
Do you think it's a very slow progress. I worked in television for years, in television news.
Yeah.
When the digital age started happening, and there was these discussions about this is linear TV. We were doing linear, and this is digital.
Yeah.
But I wonder if the digital people came along, the podcast, everyone, and what they did was linear stuff because that's what they grew up with. So that's why they did the interview and the top and tail and stuff. And it's gradually taken like a decade or two for us to work out we don't have to do it like that. It could be multifaceted. It could be a discussion group. It can be a chat online. It doesn't have to be this linear format. This is what the program is.
Yeah.
We're just being a bit slow at learning it, but it is getting there now. And I think probably now when you join a podcast, you probably expect there to be a discussion area for it to be.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. And I think after COVID, people wanted more human connection. Like we all got much more used to talking on Zoom, and that was how we were interacting with each other. And we wanted things that were real. We didn't want to just watch people, being very kind of like corporate about it. And in that kind of, we wanted to see real people having real discussions. And that kind of need for human connection seems to be kind of increasing. So I think that's why people like the natural thing. And things like TikTok, like people liked TikTok because it was just it wasn't professional content. It was just little bursts of everyday life and normal people doing normal things.
Yeah. I actually think that if it weren't for podcasting, I probably wouldn't talk to other human beings at all. For most of the time.
That's not bad, cool.
That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but not by much. So what are some of the goals though for your show? Like what do you have a purpose in mind, or was it really purely just about having a venue to explore these topics?
James, you can take this one.
Yeah. There isn't really a goal.
We haven't discussed it. No. We were just like, let's just have fun.
I said to Cara, I think for at least 6 months, maybe a year, we just do this. We just build a community and we see where it goes and what it's useful for. I mean, obviously, I've got a few things I'm going to shill in that direction. My courses, which are still going with LSP, and we put a lot more effort into them recently, and I'll use whatever outlets are there to talk about them, but it's not going to be as obviously commercial as perhaps the self-publishing show was.
Yeah.
And if we do the live show in London, it'll be a platform for that. But this will first and foremost be a more relaxed space to hang out and talk about all the stuff. And I think there's value in just that. And I think other stuff we do, Cara's talked about potentially doing a course teaching me how to write a sexy, teaching other people how to write a sexy.
Yeah, Cara Clare's School of Smart. That's
Cara Clare's School of Smart.
Scene.
So there will be some benefits for us for having that community, but it won't be first and foremost a place to sell or do anything too.
And I think personally, so part of what we do is we have the Word Count Club, where people in the Discord channel share what they're aiming to achieve each week, like new words or editing words, and then we read it out at the end of the show. And on a personal level for both of us, that's helping us to stay accountable.
Right.
And it's really motivating then to see how it's helping other people. Like that's just even just in terms of my career and helping me to get into a better writing routine, that's already helped massively. So, and we're just having fun. Like it's just genuinely nice to have a chat every week.
Yeah. That's honestly, I think that's one of the things I enjoy most about Writers Inc. is that every week I get a chance to sit with these three people I admire and just talk about, I mean, it's really interesting because if you had told me a couple of years ago, you should do a podcast where you read the news and then, someone else may actually be talking to a guest, and then you have to listen to that and then discuss that afterward. Like I'd have thought that was the most boring drudgery I could think of, but every week I look forward to that show. It's bizarre. And the reading the news has become fun. I actually kind of enjoy that part now.
Yeah. That's my old gig, news reading.
Yeah, it's kind of making me as well, like try to keep my finger on the pulse a little bit more and make sure I know what's going on. So because we try to chat at the beginning because we record quite close to when it goes out. We try to talk about things that are topical and that have just happened. So it's kind of making me do all the things that I used to do, like when I very first started, but you kind of get a bit lazy about it. You feel like, and even in terms of craft, like some of the discussions we've had on craft, they're things that I haven't thought about for years. Like Well, I think I'm on like book 47 now, so I haven't thought very much about like plot structure and character development, consciously for a very long time. So having to sit and distill that information and actually think about how to get that across.
Is that having any impact on your current writing? Coming back to think about that stuff?
Definitely. Yeah. I said the other week I started writing some short stories, which is not something I have ever done.
Oh.
And that was purely because I thought I really actually want to start practicing my craft, because I know my genre now. I know what to do. I know the beats kind of off the top of my head without really thinking about them. And the conversations that we've had made me feel like, no, I actually really want to go back and start looking at my craft and getting better as a writer and still growing as a writer.
Yeah. See, that's this other angle that I'm exploring. I'm seeing others explore it, is this idea of sort of iterative improvement. I think a lot of focus for self-publishing over the past like 10 plus years has been almost entirely marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about craft and we talk about process every now and then, but
not much.
Not that much. So
no, not enough. And we were having that conversation because we've been sort of talking about James's talk that he's going to do in Vegas, which is to do with the book package and the stuff that leads up to being able to sell your book. But we just, unless you can do all of that stuff, but then if your book isn't any good, that's not going to progress on to the next thing. So it's this kind of, it's a cycle that you as indies, we've got to do all of it. But I think we kind of push the craft thing to the background because we feel like the marketing is the thing that we really should be focusing on. But I think for to keep it interesting as well, for me, I want to feel like I'm still progressing. I want to feel like I'm growing. I want to feel like I'm becoming a better writer.
Yeah, that's been the focus of my career lately. And I think the thing that sparked this honestly has been AI in a lot of ways, because suddenly someone can produce 1,500 books in an hour and upload those. And so I was always known for being a very fast writer, and so that's no longer an advantage for me. So where do I find advantage again? So turning in
absolutely. I'm the same. Like, I write quick, and I think it is that it's like, well, if that's not going to be my advantage anymore, then I've got to double down on being human and being a better writer than Claude.
Yes,
that's what I've got to do.
Poor Claude.
I know. I love Claude. If you're listening, I do love you, really.
I have been playing with it this week because I'm going to the book fair this week. I'm going to meet Elizabeth Ann West, and we're going to go to 3 big, sort of fairly big AI events there. So I thought I should properly, I'm using AI like most people, for blurbs and add lines and copy. Played a little bit with some scene stuff a while back, but I thought I'm going to properly try and use it to write, to see what the process was like. And it actually was relatively satisfying in that it wasn't that good. It was good, but it wasn't. It was a start for a scene rather than the completed package. And that's like that's the high end version of Claude. So it's, whatever people are saying, it's some way off being able to write a novel.
If you ever ask him to write an entire chapter, every single one ends with something along the lines of, and little did they know something bad was about to happen. Every single chapter ends in the same way. I mean, my advantage also is that currently Claude won't write smart. So I just have to focus on
Puritan,
writing
isn't he,
better
Claude?
smart.
He's got like one of those tall Quaker hats.
He does lecture.
What a prude.
He says, I don't feel comfortable. And maybe we could think of a way to get the romantic relationship across without using such explicit language.
It's like being lectured by Oliver Cromwell.
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe think about my life choices.
I know. Talk about, that's not slut faming. That's the opposite of slut faming.
It's like shaming.
No, it's completely ruining my vibe.
I've been using, so I get yelled at. So Elizabeth West and I were actually on an AI panel at NINC a few weeks ago. And I think she got mad at me. I haven't been able to track her down to just check.
I'll find out tomorrow night over a pint.
Yeah, tell her I didn't mean to offend her. Whatever. But she did tell me that I'm doing everything all wrong when it comes to AI because I'm not using the right stuff. I'm too old school.
Yeah, well, that's I want to talk to her about that because she is a thought leader and an action leader in this area, and that's why I want to go in, having tried a little bit amateurishly. I mean, there's a lot more to it than simply doing what I did last week, which is I gave it the first 35,000 words of my current novel. Said, this is the scene I'm writing. This is what I want to happen into it. Can you write it? And it did a kind of okay-ish job, but I mean.
I'm not using it for the writing at all, though. I'm using it for.
I just wanted to see what it would do.
Yeah. And I've tried that too, just to see what it can produce, but it was never anything usable. No. But what it's been great for is being a kind. This is what I tried to tell her. I think she gets it, but the flaws of something like ChatGPT are what make it useful to me. The fact that it's terrible at just about everything makes it really handy for me as a kind of dumb writer's room. Like I can throw ideas at it and it gives me a bunch of awful ideas back. But then I get that sort of, the way I described it is like that, if you ever watch like House or Sherlock or something, and there's that moment where his team says some dumb stuff and then he has this brilliant insight. That's the way I do it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because House always needed, like, every single one of the team had to say something completely stupid that was just so wrong to lead him to that decision. And that's totally it. Like, if I ask for titles, if I ask for character ideas, if I ask for ideas on what happens next in a scene, I never use any of them. I get a list of like 10 things. I go, that's terrible. And then my brain goes, oh, but you could do this, and that would be really cool.
That's so because we're smarter when we're trying to correct other people, when we're we're instructing others.
Yeah. It's human instincts as well, though, isn't it? You can go to you could think, well, I could never, like, for instance, I could never do stand-up. You might think I could never do stand-up comedy. It's really hard. And sometimes you'll go to a show.
I'm so glad that you just said that. I'm so glad that you know that about yourself.
Yeah, except I've done it. But because you go to a show, and you watch somebody there, and you think, I could probably do a slightly better job than this. I think that's what happens with AI scene writing. Is you sit there thinking, I don't know how to write this scene. I don't know where to start. It writes a really bad version of it, and you think, and suddenly all those barriers are out of the way, and you think, I can do a better job than this, and you get going.
Yeah, it's just like a tool to clear writer's block. It's just a thing that I don't get writer's block anymore, because exactly that. You can ask it what to do with the next scene, and then not use any of the information and do your own thing.
Who it was in Mallorca, we were both there, weren't we, Cara? Someone said it takes away the blank page, and I think that's the best description of the use AI is to writers.
It
takes away the blank page.
It's great for research too. I mean, I have tricks I use to make sure that if I need something to actually be factual, I have little tricks I can use to, and the free one I'll give everybody is to ask it for URLs for its sources.
Yeah.
So
it does make stuff. It makes stuff up.
It will make stuff up, which is fine a lot of times for me. If I'm not, if I'm writing a piece of fiction, I don't necessarily need every fact to be, specifically real. I just need it to be in the ballpark.
He needs to be plausible, but it needs to be plausible.
Yeah. And I've lost track of how many times I've had readers write to say, I had no idea about, the Temple of Vapush, whatever. And I'm like, oh yeah, I completely made that up. But since they went and looked it up and found out there's a real thing, like, well, perhaps I'm simply a genius.
Well, who was it? I think it was Ellie Griffiths wrote in her books about the University of Suffolk, which didn't exist at the time that she was writing her crime novels. And now there is a University of Suffolk, which is very confusing because they're in two completely different places in Suffolk, and her books have existed for longer than the actual university. So she gets people saying, but that's not real. And she's like, I made it up first. They stole it from me.
Yeah. They should dedicate a building to her.
They should.
Yeah. We should all have buildings dedicated to us.
What would be inside the Kevin Tomlinson building?
Oh, that would be a mishmash of things. Think Smithsonian meets Weird Al Yankovic. That would probably be about the temperature.
I think like a physics department with Weird Al Yankovic. It would be on fire, basically.
Yeah. There you go.
Chemistry department with Weird Al Yankovic. A lot of explosions. Yeah.
So I've listened to a couple of your episodes.
Thank you.
The one I like so far the most is when you talk about how to make money as a writer, even outside of your writing. That's a good one. Do you guys plan ahead what you're going to talk about?
As in, like, the night before,
Yeah.
I sent James a WhatsApp message saying, "Are we recording tomorrow?"
We should talk about.
Yeah, maybe I thought we'd talk about this.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
I try to make notes during the week. I have a Word document open and make notes of stuff that I've picked up worth talking about.
Yeah.
We've just done 2 episodes in a row where I've been trying out my Vegas presentation on the book package on why your book doesn't sell type thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff about Swiss cheese in there, which will become clearer when you listen to it.
I think you need an actual thing of Swiss cheese.
I think I'm going to get some. I have to get some Swiss cheese. Yeah.
I think you need to.
And next week I'm going to Frankfurt tomorrow. So I think we'll talk about AI next week.
Ooh,
there you go.
We've touched on it tonight.
But yeah, we're trying not to get, because a lot of the people who are listening at the moment, a lot of the people in the Discord are new writers or new indies. So we're trying to do stuff that's going to be relevant for people at the beginning of their career, but also that people further along will still find interesting.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of podcasts that are in the indie space have all been around for a really long time now. So they all kind of got to this level where, when Mark started his, when Joe Penn started hers, everybody was at the beginning of that journey and got very far along. And so if you are new and just coming into this space, and there's still a lot of people who are brand new and just every day starting, so we're trying to give them a space and make sure that it's not too intimidating, and we're talking about stuff that's relevant for people who are just starting.
Well, you have a Discord server. Why don't you start asking them to submit ideas?
Yes.
Well, we've got a topic ideas channel where people pitch in.
That is such a good point, Carl, and I sort of forgotten. You have to keep reminding me of that. We do want to keep it at the kind of beginner level, and I think you're right. What happens with podcasts is you get to the point where you've mentioned book funnel so many times, you mention it without explaining what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's even like when we talk about
ghostwriting.
But and I said EMP, and you were like, wait, what's an EMP? Like, because other people might not know.
I know what an EMP is, but it's probably not the same thing as your EMP.
Yeah.
Electromagnetic pulse.
Oh,
that's what I was going to say. Okay.
Because the ghostwriting, I do post-apoc. So, but people listening,
yes, you explain
might not
what
get
EMP
that.
Is.
So, so we're kind of trying to keep in mind that
this is, by the way, this is why I've, when I was doing the Draft Digital show, we always did it live. And I will say one advantage to doing a live show like that is having that chat going where I can take questions from the audience during the show.
We should do live. We can do some live shows.
We've talked about doing that, actually, trying to do a couple of live shows where people
10 o'clock on a Friday morning.
Yeah. Where we actually have
an audience.
I
can see that.
We have to do it later though for America, don't we? So we're going to do a live show. We're also going to do a drunk show at some point.
Yeah.
Yes. Drunk we should do
writers.
That before Christmas. We definitely
Drunk
should.
Writers is a podcast waiting to happen.
It is. It is. Yeah. I've unfortunately I've done that podcast a few times. So well, we're at time, so we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. I hate that because I'm enjoying the hell out of talking to both of you.
It's been really fun. Thank you.
Yeah, and Cara, I'm glad we met, but we have to keep meeting now. We have to. Are you going to be at Author Nation? Are you at Author Nation?
I'm possibly, maybe. It's a logistics childcare issue at the moment, so I understand. It'll be a surprise if I'm there. You'll know because my hair will be more pink.
All right, okay, I'll hold you to that. James, I know you're there. You and I are all over that thing, apparently.
We're going to be emceeing. I've told Cara I'm going to use it as a platform for my comedy.
There you go. That's what I do.
Which is part of why I don't want to be there.
Oh, come on now. All right. Well, good. All right. So for everybody listening, it's the Indie Writers Club podcast, indiewritersclub.com. That's a great URL. You guys knocked it out of the park. IWC. We're gonna own that, and tell everybody where they can individually. Cara, where can people find your stuff, your work, and everything?
I am just Cara Clare, author on all the platforms at TikTok. My website is caraclare.com. Instagram, just Cara Clare. There's not another one of me.
All right. And Mr. Blatch, how about you?
Yeah, so my books are at jamesblatch.com and all good bookshops, and learnselfpublishing.com for the online courses for education.
All right. I only go to the bad bookshops, so I never see your books.
I don't know why people say all good bookshops. And they're not in any bookshops anyway. They're basically on Amazon. That's what I should have said.
That's what, I mean, but you can order my books at any bookshop. There you go.
That is true.
That's that's the only caveat I can give you. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, you two. I really appreciate it.
It's been really fun.
Yeah.
It has been really fun. Thank you.
And for everybody else, thank you for tuning in. Stick around. I am sure to say something just pithy and brilliant after this, so you won't want to miss that. So take care and see you next time. And here we are on the other side of the interview, where I am obligated by international podcast law to say something witty and clever, possibly intelligent, but sometimes that Venn diagram doesn't work out. I hope you enjoyed that chat with James and Cara. Sorry, Cara. Because my wife's name is Cara, and if I see a name that is similar but starts with a C, it's automatically Clara. I don't know why. And that's a British thing, I think. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Now, I wanted to kind of loop back around. I kind of hinted at this conversation about podcasting. It's been such an interesting thing for me. It's I'm a creator in many ways, and always have been, and I'm an author sort of first and foremost. I'm a writer. Let me put it this way. I have distinctions. There's lines for me in this. It's there's writers, and we are actively engaged in the form of writing, the act of writing. And then there are authors, and authors are writers or can be writers who have produced writing. They have published. That's the way I look at the distinctions there. But as a creator, I branch into other things, and podcasting was one of the formats that really attracted me early on. And I have, frankly, the guys, Johnny, Sean, and Dave, formerly from the Self-Publishing Podcast, I have them to thank for inspiring me to start my own first podcast, this show, really. Because way back then, which seems so odd to say now, but way back in the early hazy days of the beginning of the self-publishing movement, those guys ruled the airwaves basically, and it was just fascinating to me what they were accomplishing through that format. So, like a lot of writers, I had to start my own podcast. And I came in with a background in film and TV and radio, so that's helped a lot. But, like most podcasters, I've been inventing this as I go. And if you've been a listener for all these years, the format's changed a little. Things change. I'm really focused on YouTube right now. And only because it's just I've never managed to conquer YouTube. I've never really made much of an attempt, I guess, but I've always felt strongly that there should be a video version of the podcast, and so that's where this came from. And by the way, if you are listening to this and you haven't already, please feel free to go over to youtube.com/Wordslinger Podcast and subscribe to the show on YouTube. There's a lot of advantages for me if you do that. It's a little easier for me to track, see how the show's doing, and see which episodes are popular, that sort of thing. I don't get a lot of I could probably get more useful information than I get, useful data than I actually get. There's probably ways to mine it a little better than what I'm currently doing or currently aware of. But YouTube makes it easy. So if you don't mind, go check that out. And I get there are lots of legitimate reasons why people prefer to listen on a podcast platform, and that's fine too. So thank you for being listeners. I don't want you to think that I don't value you equally as much. But podcasting has been a tremendous tool for me. I think at one point, if there's a writing podcast, I've been on it. at some point. I've either been a host or a co-host, or I've been a guest. And it's at this point, it's thousands of podcasts. So it's been amazing. And the great thing about this format is like you carry it with you, right? You can listen while you're in the car, while you're taking a walk. The information is generally sort of compact. You're getting a wide array of perspectives because, the guests who come on podcasts can come from, all over the industry. So as a writer, I mean, there's all these writing podcasts, learning all these tactics and techniques and methods for marketing your work, building your business, but also craft is becoming more of a thing. We're talking about that more. We mentioned that in the interview. You don't hear a ton about craft, actually, but it's probably a conversation we should be having more of. But, then there are the people who kind of experiment, which I'm trying to be one of those people, because I've got this notion that I want the Wordslinger podcast to be, I don't know. It's not, I guess I'm not clearly defining it. What I'm wanting is to bring in people from, all over the place, not just publishing, but from other industries so that they can present perspectives and ideas and methods that maybe we're not thinking about as writers. And I guess ultimately, I mean, I can't seem to get away from the idea that this is a writer's podcast, but I've wanted it to be more of a general, have a general appeal. But, you're my community. I'm part of a rich community of authors, and this is the community I've served in one capacity or another, as a podcaster, as a speaker, as the face of Draft Digital for many years. These things, it's just built in, I guess. So if you're tuned in and you're not a writer, I'd love to hear from you and know what it is about the show that attracted you. But I kind of don't mind that my audience is primarily writers, because we're a good group, and we're usually interested in a wide array of things, and that's kind of what I want Wordslinger to be. It's a wide array show. It's all about reaching out as wide as I can get and pulling in as many interesting and new things as I can in order to educate me and at the same time vicariously maybe educate you. So podcasting has proven to be a tremendous useful tool for that, because it's a platform. If you have ever thought about doing a podcast, it's really not that hard to get started. Easier today than it was when I started, especially with platforms like YouTube. YouTube actually has a whole podcast thing. And these days, I actually host my show on Substack, which is free and helps me with list building. And there's a lot, there's some things that happen with its algorithm and its promotional tools that help grow the show and grow my reach. It's been interesting. It's been very interesting. I remember the early days, man. Thinking back to when I started Wordslinger Podcast, in a closet in my first house that I had built out as a small recording booth, had sound foam, and it's very fancy, much in some ways fancier than where I am now. But I had all this equipment and stuff left over from my production days, and so I'm like, I'm going to put all this to work. But I remember casting around trying to find advice and finding people who'd written articles and made some videos back in those early days about how they did it, what they were doing. Sometimes they would make it far more complicated than it really needed to be. I later learned. But I was kind of feeling around and figuring it out as I went. And these days now there's apps and stuff that will just effectively do everything that I did in those early days can be done so much easier, so much faster, so much cheaper. It's amazing. And, adding video now is easier than ever. And even high quality video, like what's been interesting, so I'll give you some behind the scenes stuff here, but like, if you could see my setup, and I should take photos of this someday, but like I have this rig that there's a light. Let me start over. I have my desk. This is where I sit and I do my writing. You are facing me in the spot where I spend the most time. In fact, probably 98% of my time every day is spent right here in this spot. But I've got my laptop here, and behind that is a large, 42 inch, I believe, monitor / television, and then I have a light set up behind that bounces off the ceiling and gives me this nice glow. And attached to that is this arm that holds my phone, which is what I use for a camera. And I'm calling all this out because in the early days, to get even a halfway decent video, the laptops generally had a camera, but it was never all that great. So I always tried to find what's the perfect webcam, and I never really could get anything that was decent. And now I carry an entire production studio in my pocket every single day. And so the phone serves to record all this stuff for me in 4K. And, I've got my nice microphone, which records the audio in high quality sound. It's like, to do this sort of thing, when I first started in production, it was ridiculously expensive. It required a studio, Anyway, but podcasting has had such an influence on me and so many other writers over the years. It's just it's an eternal source of wisdom and knowledge, and you're tapping into a current that's out there. What's really incredible is how willing everyone is to share everything. You can find a podcast or a YouTube video or channel for any topic, and everyone is so willing to share everything. There's actually more out there than I can absorb. You may experience this too, but just this willingness to, to give back, contribute back. I think I've said this many times before. I make very little money off of the podcast itself. I make a modest amount here and there, not much. And it fluctuates. And there's been plenty of times where I was making nothing on the podcast. And for a while there, I'm willing to do it for free. I don't get any direct benefit out of this other than the knowledge that I'm contributing something to this world that I'm a part of. And able to, I've got a platform that's grown up around this. I've got an audience that tunes in to this. It's been interesting because it's definitely a labor of love. It's definitely work that I do because I love it. And the same was true for years for my writing. So I have a history of doing this, creating and building a career around things that may or may not pay me back for all the work and effort and energy that goes into it, but so completely worth it. So I understand why James and Cara would want to do the show that they're doing, especially even now with so much already behind them in their careers. I think it's honorable that they would go through the effort and time and build this show specifically for, the incomers, the newcomers, but also remembering their existing audience and trying to provide something for both. It's a lot of work to produce a podcast. I mean, it's a ton of work. So to do it and not necessarily see a direct benefit from it, sometimes that can get a little discouraging. You might do things like take a 4-year hiatus, he said. But it's been worthwhile. Coming back to it, here's a confession. when I came back to Wordslinger Podcast, my intention was to give it its final season that it never got before. And I was going to just do a handful of interviews with people I'd already talked to 1,000 times, but, you know, who were friends of the show or people I thought had something poignant to say. I was going to do the whole thing right and then wrap it up and do a final episode and say goodbye. And something interesting happened. I mean, probably the episode after the one that I thought would be the final episode of the show, I suddenly found myself looking forward to the next episode. I suddenly found myself thinking, I could do an episode about this topic. I could interview that person. You know, I can tweak the format in this way. And I'm pretty lazy about this. Like, I've in the past, man, I've done these elaborate show clocks and schedules, and, you know, I've done things to up the production value of the show at times. But what I've found is the best thing I can do for me and for you is to sit here and have an earnest, honest conversation with you, and to bring in guests that I think will contribute to this growing gumball of wisdom that's out there. I don't know, there's something about this that has snared me, and it's become impossible for me to leave. So now I've been doing the Writers Inc. podcast with JD and Christine and Jenna for I think a couple of years now, really. And that's been an amazing experience, a different experience from what I was used to, and I'm really honored to be a part of that. And I've done all these other shows. I've done stuff with Nick Thacker, and I've had all these other opportunities over the years. And I have to say, it's just been so rewarding to me to be here, to be sitting on this basically this bar stool that I use for a desk chair, to be surrounded as I am with this office environment, or to be in a van broadcasting, or to be what I'm going to be. We're going to do a live stream from Author Nation for the Writers Inc. podcast. So, I've done events like that before. To do all this stuff and to connect with people and to provide you with what I'm discovering as I'm kind of gallivanting out in the world, it has been life-altering and empowering, and really one of the best experiences of my life. So I guess that's just what it is. Sometimes I wonder, sometimes I question, but apparently I am a writer and podcaster. So I don't see it changing anytime soon. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this podcast, this episode, and I hope you tune in to the Indie Writers Club podcast. There is a link to their website on the show notes of this episode, so go click that. And I think we're going to have to wrap it up. Thank you for tuning in again, and please feel free to subscribe, like, share, leave a comment. When you leave a comment, it helps me out. And I'm terrible because, for reasons, I don't get alerted to comments on this channel, and I'm working out why. But if you leave a comment and you don't hear from me, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's because I have neglected to go manually check and respond. But we're going to get this figured out. But thank you for being here always. And take care of yourselves out there. We'll see you all next time.
Wordslinger.